Now, I actually left a question hanging in the air in our last segment. By purposely claiming that the principle of general fit or inference to the best explanation is not a logical principle, neither is it a principle that can be proven through experience, precisely because we saw that all judgments from experience depend on the principle of uniformity. This principle itself is what is grounding that principle, and so therefore we can't ground it through induction, through experience, without creating another circle. So the question left is, how could judgments about the general beauty or elegance of a theory, the simplicity or economy of a theory, which again are judgments of value, not judgments of logic or reason, how could that possibly justify our picking one theory over the other? Lewis realizes this and says, aha, this is precisely what we would expect in a universe created by God, a rational being, but not what we should expect in a universe that arises out of non-rational, non-personal causes. Think about it. If naturalism is true, the truth is something which ultimately rests on non-rational, non-personal, non-value principles. Just there are the brute facts. And we know that the facts aren't always good looking. We call it often the ugly truth of the situation, don't we? And so if all we have is this impersonal set of events that occur through this becoming that can ultimately be explained by non-rational means, we have no reason to expect that the order behind the universe is rational at all. Then the explanation for why we expect a rational and orderly universe when we come to it would have to just be kind of like Pavlov's dogs. You've all heard of Pavlov's dogs, haven't you? The famous experiment where Pavlov was trying to show how dogs and animals through stimulus and response learn, right? And you can change dogs' behaviors in this unconscious way. Well, this is how it happened, right? Every time you ring the bell, the dog hears the bell, and then right after you ring the bell, you bring a juicy steak to the dog. And you do this for a long enough time that the dogs then come to associate, right, irrationally, the ringing with the bell as the cause of the bringing of that scrumptious steak. And so then once that pattern has been solidified, has been habituated in them through stimulus and response, through positive reinforcement, then just the ringing of the bell will cause the dog to expect the steak. And that would have to be the ultimate kind of explanation that you would have to give as to why rational beings like us would expect and that the universe would always be more orderly rather than less orderly, more beautiful and fine and economically tuned than less tuned. That's the only explanation you could finally give if naturalism is true, because you couldn't prove it through experience, because as we said, arguments from experience depend on this very principle that nature is orderly and therefore can't prove it. You couldn't prove it through reason, and therefore the only cause is some non-rational cause. And therefore, if naturalism is true, we have no reason to expect that nature behaves like this at all, and that therefore the general principles behind nature are either economical or beautiful or simple or elegant. And therefore no reason to believe that Einstein's theory is a better theory than Newton's theory at getting us at the nature of reality. But let's say that the source of the universe, the ultimate fact, which is the source of all other facts, is rational, a personal being that values and that hates disorder, and that therefore this order that we find repugnant in nature and therefore try to explain through science, the creator wouldn't create that disorder to start with. And therefore the belief that the creator is rational makes the principle highly likely, doesn't it? Because a rational being would create a rationally discernible and understandable and intelligible universe, a universe that would be more likely to be elegant and beautiful and economical than a universe that's disorderly, chaotic, and therefore not intelligible. And so Lewis says, you have a choice, don't you? You can try to close off nature from all miracles, and by doing that, really close off nature from the one justification that it would have for being orderly and therefore ground the doing of science. Or you can accept that nature is created by something other than nature, a rational being, and therefore ground all the inferences that make science possible. But in doing that, you can't close off nature completely, can you? You have to accept the possibility and even the probability, in some cases, of miracles if the evidence warrants it. And so, thus we come to the crux of the matter. The scientists like Dawkins and Dennett, or naturalists, have always claimed that the theist, the one who believes in a supernatural God as a rational creator of the universe, by believing that, actually close off scientific investigation. They say, because then all you have to say is God did it, right? But by saying that, Lewis argues, they misunderstand the point of saying there's a God. We don't say there's a God so that everything that occurred, we just say God did it. God's omnipotent, so therefore it happened. No. In fact, God becomes essential for grounding the very reason that Daniel Dennett and Richard Dawkins says is what we should use to discern the mysteries of nature. Without a rational God, there's no good reason to believe that the fundamental principles that we use to do science would actually work. And that is part of the reason, you might say, that science arises, the scientific revolution occurs in the West, in monotheistic cultures, and not in the Far East, where the basic nature of the universe was believed to be chaotic and therefore non-rational. So, therefore, you have your choice, don't you? Accept a rational, supernatural creator that thus allows us to ground our examination of nature in rationality, or reject such a creator and ultimately reject the very principles that the scientist wants to use to understand and investigate nature herself.